Thank you, Sally Ann. Thanks to Tay, as Thich Nhat Hanh was known to his students. An unconditional love that does not expect anything in return. Such a love we officially, at our recent General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, acknowledged officially as central in Unitarian Universalism. It's now embedded within our bylaws of that association. I find it fascinating that bylaws look at issues like that, but that's who we are as a faith community. Central to our laws, central to our values is love. In our movement and in congregations of various sizes around the world, love is central to our faith as Unitarian Universalists. Unitarian Universalists, that's who we are. And one of the problems with that is it's kind of a long name. So sometimes we shorten it. We are UU. We are UU, the Church of the the Church of the Open Mind. I spaced it out for a moment because my mind was too open. We'll start it again. And I'm going to teach it to you. We are UU, the Church of the Open Mind, the loving heart, and the caring hands. Let's try it together. We are UU, the Church of the Open Mind, the loving heart, and the caring hands. It's a pretty good summary of who we try to be as UUs. But sometimes that's confusing, especially to those of us who are not UU. So we describe ourselves as Unitarians. Well, it's shorter, but some of us have a problem with that. You see, I'm one of those that has a problem with that because I'm a Universalist. And for me, Unitarian is an adjective to describe what kind of Universalist I am. Today I want to break down what I mean to that, and in order to do so, I'm going to share a bit of history and a bit of theology. Now, history and theology are both important because they shape who we are and inspire and inform what and how we want to be in the world, both individually and in community. History offers lessons about mistakes from the past we might not want to repeat, as well as a record of past successes we would seek to replicate. Theology, literally meaning the study of God or goddess, but in reality it means the study of what we find holy or ultimate, of what is most deeply meaningful within our own being and our way of living in the world. Now, amongst the theology classes I took at Meadville Lombard Theological School, it was a little intimidating when I saw the name of the school, was my UU seminary. And I took classes in things like process theology, liberal theology, and humanist theology, because theology is not always theist. And now, some history. As many of you may know, the Unitarian Universalist Association came into being in 1961 when two somewhat similar faith organizations, each with its own history and theologies, became one. The American Unitarian Association, the AUA, which was originally established in 1825, and the Universalist Church of America, the UCA, which was founded in 1797, merged. The Unitarian Universalist Association, the UUA, came into being. I'd like to point out, too, that they merged symbols, which is expressed in various versions. This chalice symbol before us is a flaming chalice, but also it's surrounded by two interlocking circles. The chalice came from the Unitarians. The circles were the symbol of the Universalist Church of America. A circle, two circles that hold within a diversity of beliefs and practices. Though we became the UUA in the 1960s, as Universalists and as Unitarians, we have been around for a long time. Some people still hang on to this notion that we're some kind of new age movement that came into being in the 60s and 70s. That goes back much further than that in terms of our traditions. In the 1960s, the theologies behind those separate organizations that became one in the last century, those theologies go back to the earliest days of the Jewish breakaway group that came to be known as the Christians. By the 20th century, we find that Unitarians and the Universalists had many shared beliefs. I could come back to that history of universalism and early Christianity another Sunday, but that would be a very different sermon. Though both the traditions of Unitarian and Universalism had by the 20th century hold many shared beliefs. Though both traditions were initially progressive forms of Christianity, they had both become fundamentally non-creedal, offering room for varied beliefs amongst the members. Both saw themselves as theologically progressive, meaning truth is not fixed. One way that's been stated is revelation is ongoing. Both were engaged in progressive political efforts, and there were also some significant differences. Now, there's an old joke that's been out there for a while that says, if there is such a place as heaven, neither Unitarians nor Universalists would go there. Unitarians believe they are too good to be sent there, while Universalists believe God is too good to send anyone to such a place. And there's some truth to those differences. Back in the 1820s, the Unitarian minister and theologian William Ellery Channing wrote a sermon titled Likeness to God, in which he called on individuals through intentional efforts of personal refinement to become bit by bit what one might call more godly. In an 1830 address to the Massachusetts legislature, Channing said, he's this mind part, right? Open mind. I call that mind free, which resists the bondage of habit, which does not mechanically copy the past nor live on old virtues, but which listens to new and higher munitions of thought and rejoices to pour itself forth in fresh and higher exertions. Though the flowery language of the times these days has called for change and growth and spiritual evolution, both individually and as a movement, rings true for us today. I also want to talk a bit about Universalist history and lift up a noted contemporary of Channing's from the other side of the faith family, an individual called Hosea Ballou. Ballou had been raised Baptist, but had come to a place when he could no longer accept that faith's assertion about hell and damnation. He became a Universalist, and he took a message of a loving God and a salvation for all on the road. He was a circuit rider. I'd like to share a story about Ballou. He'd been circuit riding from town to town, sharing his loving message, when one night a farmer invited him to dinner and humble lodging. After dinner, the two talked about theology into the night. You know, you have to understand, this was before internet and any streaming and no TV at all. And back in those times, people would stay up into the night talking deeply about things like theology. Finally, it was bedtime. The farmer guided Ballou to the barn, where a pile of straw would be his bed. The farmer told Ballou that his son would likely arrive during the night, and he would be boisterous upon his return. I'm sorry, Reverend, he said, but he's fallen from the way. He goes into town drinking and carrying on and doing I don't know what, and comes home drunk and loud. I just don't know what to do. Ballou replied, I think I can help. I know a way we can teach him a lesson. I saw on the way out of town a place where the road runs along the base of a hill. I'll go over to the backside of that hill and I'll make a big fire. You wait out in the road and stop your son when he comes in. I'll come and help you, and we'll drag him down off the horse. We'll drag him down behind the hill, and we'll throw him into that fire. That'll teach him a lesson. The farmer looks at Ballou and says, but Reverend, I love my son. I could never throw my son into a fire. Ballou paused for a moment. Yes, my friend, that's true. And that's true of the loving Father God. He could never throw any of his children into a fire. When people want to know about universalism, I think that story is a pretty good summary of what we mean when we talk about a loving deity, a loving energy, if you will, in the world, a loving spirit of life. Such love, both from a loving divinity and love shared on earth, is the core of Universalist theology. Channing and Ballou were contemporaries. In fact, for a time, late in their careers, both served good-sized Boston churches, yet they probably never met because they moved in very different circles. While Channing spent his time with the wealthy Boston merchant class, Ballou's congregants were more working class and had often just recently moved into the city. By the time of the 1961 consolidation, the class differences were mostly historical and perceptual, especially in urban settings. The merger was in large part a practical movement to strengthen two small denominations that had limited resources, and it has served us well. We are better together. In recent years, we have collectively become increasingly universalists in our theology. The image of a heart at the center of our new bylaws is the symbol of this shift. As Channing advised back in the 19th century, we have continued to listen for new and higher motivations of conscience. In our times, the love-centered universalist theology has been manifest in direct action to become more radically inclusive. That inclusivity has included more intentional welcome to people of color, gender and identity nonconforming folk, and many who have for far too long been marginalized. Centering these voices can be challenging. I find it particularly personally challenging because it means that someone like me, a cisgendered heterosexual white man, needs to move out of the center often to allow space for others. That shift in theology has not been easy for some. Some have seen our increased focus on our loving heart as being kind of anti-intellectual, as though a focus on our loving heart could somehow infringe on our being open-minded. Some of my clergy colleagues have left the UU Ministerial Association, and some, including a few congregations, have launched something called the North American Unitarian Association, the NAUA. On its website, the NAU states, NAUA is a growing association of Unitarians, Universalists, and other religious liberals. We are working together to support one another in our individual and congregational efforts to make our world happier and more justice through the practice and promotion of our shared value. They summarize these values, which they note emerged during the Renaissance and flourished during the Enlightenment, as freedom, reason, and tolerance. And they consider them fundamental to any society to demonstrate respect for the worth and dignity of every person. Freedom, reason, and tolerance. These are all well and good. But to me, as a universalist, they're incomplete. The newly promulgated value statements of the UUA centers love as the grounding source of our values. The NAUA does not seem to agree with such a love-centric theology. The Unitarian Universalist theologian Pendenka, whose name was imposed on her by the Anglican Archbishop Desmond Tutu, has coined a phrase, love beyond belief. Love beyond belief. Commenting on Pendenka's theology, my colleague and dear friend, the Reverend Bruce Bodie, observes that she believes that liberal religion has gone off the track and that it relates primarily to the head and intellect rather than to the heart and emotions. But real religion, he writes, rests upon a feeling foundation. It works with the raw emotional material of the heart. It is of, from, and for the heart. Religion addresses or ought to address the traumatized heart, the unstrung heart, the bewildered heart, the fearful heart, the lonely heart, the longing heart, the anxious heart, the despairing heart, the sorrowful heart, the shattered heart. It also, he continues, takes account of or should take account of the awakened heart, the aroused heart, the astonished heart, the heart cracked open by wonder and awe, the heart that would be filled with poetry, praise, and song. These are some of the movements, motions, and emotions of the heart. It is here where religion is born and where it authentically lives. The heart. The heart is where religion is born and where it lives. Bodie continues. Religion has to do with the expansion of the heart and seeing and feeling a divine presence in all things, and of developing a posture of loving kindness, compassion, and care towards all creatures and forms of being, beginning with ourselves. Real religion is not, first of all, what you believe in your head or think with your mind. It is deeper than doctrine. It's how you act, how you care, how you connect, how you treat others and yourself with loving kindness, how your heart is transformed. And love beyond belief has to do with the depth of your actual loving, the practice and discipline of caring and loving with such depth and power that it can only be described as unbelievable. Loving beyond all belief and expectation. Loving with such depth and power that can only be called unbelievable. Such unbelievable love in Buddhism, as expressed as Maitreya, or sometimes translated as metta. It's also akin to the kind of love Buddhists call karma, which is often translated as compassion. Such love offers to us and engage and experience love beyond belief. A love which we give, a love which we receive, a love which we practice, a love that motivates and empowers us and is embedded in what we do in the world. May it be so. May we make it so through our practices, our actions, our every deed. I invite you now to join in a brief metta prayer. I'll say a phrase and I'll ask you to repeat it back to me. Let's invite the bell to sound first. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May all be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be well. May all be peaceful and at ease. May all be whole. Please take a full cleansing breath in and out as we breathe together in community.